can. Thank you. Hello, astronomers, astrophysicists, planetary scientists, and cosmologists. I am Alaina G. Levine. I'm president of Quantum Success Solutions. I am a professional speaker, a corporate comedian, a science writer, a STEM career coach, and the author of 2 books. And I'm really excited today. We have assembled an all-star panel of really amazing leaders who have wonderfully built joyous careers in astronomy, education, and outreach. I know so many of you have been asking about how you can build a career in astronomy outreach. Well, you came to the right place. We're going to spend today talking about this. Before I introduce the panel, I just want to let you know I'm going to be monitoring the chat the entire time. This is being recorded, so you'll have a chance to be able to review the recording later. But the chat is going to be there for you today, for you to get some goodies, to be able to connect with us, and then also to ask questions. So any questions that you have, you can just put into the chat and we'll be able to answer them for you. One more thing I wanted to let you know, that as a member of the AAS, one of the many, many, many benefits that you have to advance your career is a deeply discounted program to book career consultations with me, where we meet privately and confidentially to discuss any career or job-related question that you have. Diane, can you put that in the chat really quickly for us? We're putting in the chat a link for you to directly book these sessions for you. It is something that the AAS is very committed to, being able to help you advance your career in a way that makes sense for you, that's aligned with who you are as a person. And this is one of the many things that you can do to do that. So I hope you will take advantage of that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to introduce our panel. I am so excited to welcome, first and foremost, Tania Anderson. She is the Community Outreach Engagement Manager in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office at Space Telescope Science Institute. Hello, Tania. I'm so glad you're here. How are you doing today?
I am good, and thank you so much for having me here today.
I am so thrilled to have you, and I can't wait to hear about all the different things that you're going to share with us about your career that you've built in outreach. I'm also so thrilled to welcome Rica Sirbaugh French. She is a professor of astronomy at MiraCosta College and the associate director of the Center for Astronomical Education. Hi, Rica. I'm so happy you're here. How are you doing today?
Howdy, I'm excellent. Thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation. And last but absolutely not least, I am so excited to welcome Shanil Virani. Shanil is the Eclipse. He's on the Eclipse ambassadors team of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. Shanil, hello, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. This is the pinnacle of my existence, since I joke for the others on the panel. But I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. I wish this was something that existed when I was a grad student. So this is fantastic.
Don't we all? And I am so thrilled that you're here. So thank you all for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to start by just asking each of you, and Tania, let's start with you. I want to hear a little bit about your career origin story. How did you get started in the business of outreach, working for STSCI? Tell us a little bit about your career arc, and let's tantalize our audience today. Let's give one quick piece of advice about building a joyous career in outreach. Tania, take it away, please.
Oh, absolutely. So I've been part of Space Telescope Science Institute for over 2 decades. So I would say 25 years. And so my role there is organizing STEM-based events at the Institute. Our focus is bringing more awareness of who we are in Baltimore City and County, and also pipeline development, trying to get students into our workforce to become future scientists and other STEM disciplines. So I work with schools, libraries, community-based organizations, and the community at large. I started a grassroots program called the Youth for Astronomy and Engineering program, which now is institutionalized and is part of our pipeline development strategy at the Institute. And so if I am to give any kind of tip for creating a joyous career in outreach, is if you have the passion, opportunities will come. So I definitely advise, to volunteer as much as you can. It'll give you the experience, as well as give you the connection with others who share the same passion as you.
Tania, I'm so thrilled that you were able to share that with us. volunteering in my own career, my background is physics and math. I was an astronomy major before I was seduced by the dark side. Shh, don't tell anybody. But I've been amongst the physical scientists and the physical sciences my entire career. And same thing with me, Tania. What has worked so well for me is saying yes to so many different types of volunteer opportunities. Every volunteer opportunity I took advantage of led to another one, which gave me more insight and data about what I could do in my unicorn career. So I love the fact that you were able to share that with us. Rica, how about you? Give us a little bit of insight about your origin story and career arc, and one piece of advice to start us off on a good foot as well, please.
Sure. I will start by saying I swore that I would never work with the public. I would never be a teacher. That's just not going to happen. I would be content to sit behind a workstation and almost never talk to another human being ever again for the rest of my life. Having said that, I did start doing outreach as an undergraduate. I was already an undergraduate before I even knew being an astronomer was a thing. I thought as telescopes were something you bought at the Sears mail order shop, and that's pretty much what you did. I did not know that there was such a thing. There was such a thing as an astronomical observatory, and not only could you get paid to study the universe, but that being able to share that with other people was also a thing. I guess I even though I started the outreach pretty early, the being a teacher part was an accident, but being someone who teaches at a 2-year school, and I know there was a webinar on the 2-year schools not too long ago, folks teaching in 2-year schools, and apologies, I didn't get to attend that, but I hope somebody mentioned that teaching astronomy at a 2-year school doesn't mean you just teach astronomy at a 2-year school. You are usually a one-person outreach program all by yourself, and if you want your astronomy courses to succeed, then you really need to have a significant outreach component. I guess the bit of advice, almost exactly what Tania already said about the passion, but I'll go a step further and say, don't hide who you are. Don't censor who you are. If you're excited about it, you need to let that show. One of the things that kind of drives me up the wall is when I see people who have these amazing careers like astronauts and things like that, and they're like, yeah, it's really cool. I get to, go to space. I'm like, are you kidding me? You get to go to space. You can act like you're a little bit excited about that. So if you let that part of your personality shine, people will notice.
Well, and also, Rica, that's not only that will they notice, but you will do your best work when you are able to be yourself and express your full enthusiasm for what it is that you're doing. You're most creative. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And people respond to that more positively than sometimes those of us, thinking we need to critique ourselves and censor ourselves don't exactly have, we have a bit of a skewed viewpoint of how others perceive us. And so it's natural, of course, but at the same time, people really respond to you being your natural self.
Absolutely. And, that's part of expressing yourself as a human and leaning into your humanity. I always tell people when you're writing a cover letter for a job, if you're applying for a job, let's say like at STSCI, I mean, my goodness, it's the home of the Hubble. Folks, let's be honest with you. Like, that is super exciting. Express that, show them, tell them how happy you are and what this means to you to be able to be a part of this exciting, vibrant, brilliant team. Show that enthusiasm. So I love that, Rica. Thank you. All right, Shanil, tell us your narrative arc, your career origin story, and give us a tip also to lead us off on a good foot, please.
I've just heard so much fantastic advice already. It's going to be hard to top that. So my brief origin story. I was fascinated with astronomy since the earliest time I can remember, with the moon, and of course, being a young nerd, going to the library and looking at all the pretty pictures that you see from ground and space-based observatories, and getting fascinated by what the physics, what these colors and the morphologies were telling us. I say that because I did an undergrad degree in physics, and I even remember my senior honors thesis. It was 30 years ago. I can't believe I just said that word, that time scale, and it was on decaying tau neutrinos and its contribution to the extragalactic background line. It was incredibly, it was a theoretical project and led to papers I thought this is this is fascinating. This is incredible. This is exciting. And then I took a detour. I have a non-traditional route to grad school. I spent 5+ years then as part of the Chandra Science Operations team at the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. And, every day was exciting because every day, just like at Space Telescope, you're seeing an image come down from a great observatory that no one's ever seen before and is telling you something exciting. And so I love that because it went back to me as a little boy and seeing these pretty pictures and trying to understand it. And I say the story, and I generally, when I talk to younger students, high school students, because you have a path, you have an idea of what you want to follow, and that for me was a research astrophysicist. That my time at the CFA informed the places I wanted to apply for grad school, with whom I wanted to work, the project I wanted to undertake, the data I would need to answer the questions. So I went to Yale, and you only had to TA your first year, to be a teaching fellow the first year. I spent my entire 6 years teaching, and that's when I had my eureka moment, that the thing that I was most excited and passionate about wasn't the research arc, it was the teaching arc. Physics didn't come easy to me. Calculus didn't come easy to me. And it's something that Tania also kind of highlighted. I had to work at it, I had to persevere. And in persevering and overcoming some of these barriers, I learned how not to teach physics, how not to teach calculus. And so I had those kind of epiphanies and those experiences as a grad student. And so the biggest thing for me at Yale was that I decided I didn't want a research arc. I wanted to do teaching and then astronomy outreach. And because my real passion, to be my authentic self, as you're describing, Alaina, was in sharing what we know about the cosmos and how we know what we know. So I found a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, and I got a job offer at James Madison University to be the planetarium director, and that really was the start. But it sounds like it's an easy line to draw, but coming back to both what Rica and Tania said, to volunteer and then to have these experiences, you have to create opportunity. You have to create opportunities to be able to show and experience and develop. And so as a graduate student, I often went into local elementary and middle school schools. They were starved for having someone come in to teach phases of the moon and various other causes of the seasons, other activities. Those were opportunities I cherished. There were open houses at the observatory where you got to engage with the public. You're not taught science communication. You're not taught how to talk to the public about science. You're taught how to write a paper and publish a paper and how to write grants, right, as a graduate student. And so, these are opportunities that you can then develop that kind of skill set to have a career in science communication, education, and outreach, and draw on when you start applying for jobs. I'll talk more about it. I know we'll have opportunity for questions, but I think you need to create these opportunities and to start showcasing your skills and your passion.
Yeah, excuse me for interrupting. I'm so glad that you were able to verbalize what you just said, because a couple of things that I got from what you said. Number one is how fabulous that you realized what was the right career for you and what was the wrong career for you. You were able to honor your authentic self and create that unicorn career based on your own data about yourself, realizing what it is that you love to do and also what it is that you did not want to do. And that is always fabulous when we are able to gather that data about ourselves and then to take the decision or make the decision to honor ourselves by pursuing a unicorn career that makes sense for who we are, that is aligned with us. So I love that you had that experience. And then the other thing that I really appreciate you sharing is this idea that there's so many different skills and experiences that we have in astronomy and in STEM more broadly, and honestly in anything that we do in our lives that we can draw on that can make us give us superpowers in careers in outreach. So I want to talk more about that in a bit. We're starting to get some questions in. Keep them coming. I'm going to just ask a couple more questions from our panel, and then I'm going to go to your questions. But, one of the things that really strikes me about outreach careers, particularly in astronomy, is the diversity and the variety and the breadth and the depth of all the different types of astronomy outreach careers. I mean, really, it could be designed in any sort of ecosystem, any sort of organization. You could be doing all sorts of different tasks, solving different problems, using different skills. And I'd like to get a little bit of a sense of what do you all do in your day-to-day? Tania, why don't we start with you? Give us a little bit of you sort of gave us a hint at it, and I'd like to just ask you to go into a little bit more detail. What are you actually doing, and what skills are you using? Please.
Sure, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, I manage the Youth for Astronomy and Youth for Astronomy Engineering program, which is a local outreach program that focuses more on students who live in Baltimore City and County. And so we have a variety of events throughout the year where we invite the students as well as their parents, because we need the parents' support as well to ensure that these students, if they have a vested interest in pursuing a degree in astronomy, that they have the support of their parents. And believe it or not, you'd be surprised of when the parents attend our events, they're sometimes even more excited than the students because they're living their life sometimes through the students. So that's an exciting component. And I also manage our internship program, and both our outreach program and the internship program is part of our STEM development program to get the students who participate in our outreach program to one day intern with us, and then hopefully at some point in the future to join our workforce. So that's kind of like my role in a nutshell.
I love it. It's very, very varied. It sounds like there's never a day that is the same day as the day before. Would that be fair to say?
Very much so. Very much
I
so.
love it. I love it. My very first job when I graduated from the University of Arizona was in the physics department as director of communications. And so much of my work was outreach, doing tours for students in schools, doing physics fun night. We had what was called Daughters on Campus Day because it was, before the turn of the century. So literally when dinosaurs, walked the earth. I loved the variety of skills I used, the variety of work products I was producing. And it sounds like, Tania, you have the same type of enjoyment from that experience. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
I love it. Love it. Rica, how about you? So what do you do? What do you do every day? And what are some of the skills you use and or problems that you solve in your role in outreach?
Yeah, so I'm on paper only a teacher, but in order to have, like I was mentioning before, to have a robust astronomy program where people want to keep taking those courses. I mean, it's true that astronomy sort of sells itself, right? You don't have to do a whole lot for the content, but at the same time, you have to make that content fun and exciting for people. And you have to show them that it's accessible to them. One of the things that I sometimes tell my students is that the sky is free, or at least it's supposed to be. And I'm one of the ones who's fortunate enough to know a little bit about some of it. And so I feel a pretty intense obligation to be able to share what I know with as many people as possible. So while I do teach almost every day, the outreach component is not small. Communicating with groups on campus from literature courses that want to study sci-fi novels, and they want a scientist to come and talk with them about what's the good sci-fi and the bad sci-fi components of the literature they're reading, or the television show that the film group is putting on or hosting, right, a viewing of that week. Or we have the older, wiser learners. We call them our life group, the Learning is for Everyone group. And so they're mostly senior citizens, and they are one of the most active, intense groups of people on our campus. They meet every Friday, and they have 2 speakers every single Friday. And so interacting with that group and getting yourself out there, we have what's called a speakers bureau. So registering with your school's speakers bureau to get you out there. I do a lot of shameless self-promotion with students that work in a lot of places. Astronomy on Tap is a popular program that I'm guessing several astronomers know of. We don't actually have a version of it right here locally where I am in Oceanside, but we do have, we actually used to have a science-themed brewery, and they were called Wavelength. And so a lot of students would actually get together there and study for the upcoming test, or get together and do a homework session, and they would sometimes ask you to come over. And making those kinds of connections, you accidentally could end up giving a talk at one of those places because they hosted some of that occasionally. The skills that I utilize most often are actually just an ability to try and read who my audience is, and not just for the age group, but Anybody who's dealt with speaking to different age groups knows those tiny little humans, some of them, their wheels turn much more critically than many adults do. So engaging the younger humans and the older ones, the especially senior citizens, they are two of the toughest groups to give public talks and engagements with, because they don't let you get away with anything. You can't slide anything by them, because the tiny humans, they don't have a filter yet, right? So they just say whatever they want and they ask whatever they want. And the older humans probably do, but they don't care and they don't use it anymore. So they will just ask you. If they want to know a question, they will ask it to you. So being able to read that audience and communicate effectively with those different groups and using the cognitively appropriate language, and that includes not only developmentally appropriate, but content appropriate, right? You don't want to start giving a talk about obliquities when I could just say tilt, right? Because then it means people don't have to whip out their phone and look up obliquity, and now you just ticked off, 3/4 of the audience. But also, I guess it's really about communicating more with the public, because you certainly do that in your classroom, obviously, but you kind of know who your age group is there. But putting yourself out there in front of people as an outreach person to interact with those different audiences, you never know what you're going to get. It's a mixed bag almost every time. And so being able to adapt on the fly, think quickly on your feet and adapt on the fly is really very helpful.
Well, and who doesn't think better on their feet than astronomers? So it seems like it's like a natural progression and a natural career path for so many astronomy educated professionals to go into outreach to solve those problems. I'm so glad you were able to clarify for us the different intergenerational communication opportunities and outreach opportunities that you are involved in. And that's super important for all of us to be thinking about, that when we're doing outreach, it's not one-dimensional, it's not two-dimensional. In many cases, it's 4D chess, because there's so many different people in the audience. There's different audiences that we're trying to reach, different languages they speak, different cultures they're involved in. And knowing all of that and being able to incorporate that into effective outreach and communication strategies to reach your goal and to achieve the agenda that you and your team and your organization and indeed the field is trying to do, that is part of the challenge. Would that be fair to say, Rica?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it. Shanil, how about you? What do you do? Tell us what you do and what kinds of skills are you using day to day?
So, the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, although it's based in San Francisco, I'm actually a remote employee located in central Virginia in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley. I'm actually in San Francisco, ironically, this week for the AGU meeting. And so the ASP was founded in the late 19th century as a public nonprofit to engage in science education and science literacy. And that's what we've been doing. And so one of the programs that I'm involved with now is using these two eclipses that have crisscrossed the United States. We had the annular in October, of course, and we have then the total solar eclipse coming on April 8th. And so we're using these eclipses as a way to create a network of community engagers, community outreach experts that can talk about eclipses, that can go to their community centers, their libraries, their schools. And we want to reach, in particular, we want to reach underserved and underrepresented communities. Oftentimes when museums or science centers or planetaria host events, we know the kind of demographics that go and attend. And so, and that's, there's a population of Americans that aren't reached by doing it that way. And so this model of going to where they are and sharing the excitement and passion of science, one of the things we learned in 2017, in fact, for the last total solar eclipse, is that there were some schools and school districts that kept their children inside because of liability issues, right? And so those are the kinds of conversations and the kinds of concerns we're trying to lay to get it to all 50 states, even though it's going through a narrow band of the United States. We have local citizens in 47 and in 4 territories of the United States that are talking to their community. And I think that's what makes astronomers unique, is that, we have this connection to the cosmos and we understand the science, and then we can find ways to connect with the audience, like like Rica was saying, to the different audiences, the different age groups, and to make it exciting, to show. And we're never afraid, which is what I love about this field. We're never afraid to say, I don't know. What a great question. Let's try and figure it out, right? Because in astronomy, that's what it's all about. So, the kinds of skills that that you bring into this, I think, is uniquely astronomy. Is to say, I don't know. Is to say, how do we figure it out? And then how to communicate that to your audience, knowing to keep it jargon and vocabulary free. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't also add that one of our programs is called Eclipse Stars, and it's targeted towards early career faculty, graduate students, postdocs in science communication. Again, it's using the total solar eclipse as a bait and switch, as a way to get the training, and it's all free, of course. But I encourage, especially for early career astronomers, for graduate students, to get involved. This is a great way to create those opportunities I was suggesting earlier, where you can then go into your community, go into a library, go into a school, and share the wonder of the eclipse and the various cultural responses, which is also incredible, which we don't often do.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about your career, Shanil, and also the particular job that you have right now, I mean, as an ambassador, the thing that I think we may undersell this aspect of being in astronomy and being in astronomy outreach is that, as so many of us know, and I believe our executive director, Kevin Marvel, has talked about this idea that for many, many, many members of the public, their first taste and connection with the wonder of science was looking up and seeing the stars. And so to think that that's their first interaction with the universe and the universe of STEM, how privileged it is to be able to be a part of the outreach community, to be able to help utilize and leverage and, in a certain respect, even exploit the science of the cosmos as a way of connecting and encouraging more people to go into STEM, kind of like what you're doing, Tania, in encouraging students in the STEM employment and educational pipeline. We got a really good question. I'm just going to jump right into it. We're getting so many questions. I'm hoping to get to as many of those as possible. But Madeline asks a question. And it just disappeared. Hold on one second. How abundant are the opportunities for purely astronomy, science, outreach focused jobs? So I'd love to hear from all of you today on the panel, how you got your job and what you know about astronomy outreach positions. How abundant are they? What kind of qualifications, education, experience is necessary? Who would like to take this? Rica, do you want to take this on first? I'd love to hear your perspective, given that you're with an Institute of Higher Education. Please.
Yeah, I got really lucky. The job that I have, of course, was advertised as a faculty position, but at the same time, my institution made it very clear in their job description that they wanted someone to spearhead an astronomy program. They wanted someone to develop courses. They'd never had an astronomer before at this institution until I got there. So astronomy was sort of it's the other STEM field that's part of our physical science department that whoever's left over teaches the Astro 101, or that's kind of how it went. And so they were very proactive in wanting a leader, someone to really take it on and make it their own. And so they were specifically looking for an astronomer. So I got really fortunate with respect to that. What I have come to recognize, though, is that is not usually how my kind of position is advertised, even at most two-year schools. It is not typically indicated that outreach is going to be a significant component. They may list it, sure, especially being part of the two-year school system or community colleges, as they're called in some places, junior colleges, because a lot of us still have trade and technical programs as well, vocational programs. So while they may mention it, it's not usually a highlight of it's sort of an afterthought, and they expect the faculty side of things to take precedence, to come first. And then anything else, outreach is extra. If you want to do research, that's on you. We don't really have the resources to help you with that. We'll support you, but we don't really have resources to support you. So it's really kind of it's sort of the two sides of the same coin, in that it's a little depressing and frustrating sometimes because there aren't always the resources that you would like, especially since those of us who went to graduate school in astronomy are typically used to having, pretty substantial resources, and you certainly don't have that in this type of position. But at the same time, if you try to spin it and view it as though it's a challenge, I've got an opportunity to make a place here, not for me personally, but for astronomy as a discipline, as a way of connecting with the physical world around you, as a way of engaging more people, as a way of bringing more people onto that campus. And so you can really be surprised at how many different types of people you will attract to your school just by doing something as simple as a public observing night, having just a few portable telescopes, especially if it's only you. If I had a penny for every public observing night I'd done entirely by myself in the 20 years that I've been at MiraCosta, I have a tiny pile of pennies right here. No, actually, I'd have quite a few because it was me for a long time. I was the astronomy program. And while it's true that I am the only full-time astronomer, we are fortunate to have several part-timers who help out occasionally out of the goodness of their hearts, because again, it's not part of your job description typically. So those types of positions are few and far between, and the fact that some of them might be but aren't really advertised as such is even more of a problem. So I think maybe we as a discipline need to do a better job of explaining if we want that to be a significant component, and just being honest about what it is we want from the people that we're bringing on board, and how do we want to engage our communities, because that's something that should be in those job descriptions.
Well, indeed. And in fact, the more outreach we do, the more opportunities we build for astronomy, astronomers, and STEM and scientists more broadly in the future, right? The more outreach we do and we convince the public how important astronomy research is and how this translates to innovations in technology and opportunities that impact the public every single day, the more opportunity we will have for funding of astronomy research, more of an employment pipeline, more policy support. It all snowballs down the road. So it's very, very important. Shanil, how about you? How did you get your jobs in astronomy outreach? But I'd also like to hear how abundant, from your perspective, do you see astronomy outreach positions being, and what are some of the skills that you think are important to get those jobs?
So, we have just gone through a 2-year period where there was a lot of polarization in science literacy, and just science knowledge within the general public. And if that doesn't behoove us to show us that we need to do much more work in talking to the public about the importance of science, why it's necessary, how we know what we know, then we're in trouble, I think. So I think it's only going to increase, right? And those science literacy skills is one of those ancillary benefits that comes about by doing community outreach and engagement. And so for my first job as planetarium director coming out of grad school, these are advertised. These are advertised positions, in the AAS job register. I will say, very similar to what Rica was saying, as a planetarium person, you're often an island universe unto yourself as well. You're running a planetarium. If it's affiliated with the university, you also have teaching responsibilities, but then you're also expected, of course, to do star parties and open houses and community events. You may have, some students or a team of students to help with those events, but you're left to your own. I loved that, and I thrived in those conditions because that gave me opportunity to come back to that thing I was saying at the beginning, to create these opportunities. My parents were Muslim refugees to Canada in '72. I couldn't go to space camp, the real one in Alabama, right, in Huntsville, because I couldn't afford it. So I created one at our planetarium, and that made me also cost conscious, right? That, I don't want to now create programs where there would be economic barriers. And so that then led me to create, networks with the Boys and Girls Club in my community, with other groups that what I know would love to be on a university campus, may not see themselves at that age, but would love to be involved, and then maybe change experiences and attitudes. And so I think to the last question you asked, Alaina, about opportunity, I think, and it's, again, it's anecdotal. But there seems to be a lot more of these positions, certainly than when I was a grad student. You look at the major observatories; they have EPO teams because it's not sufficient now just to do the science project that a PI has proposed to. You have to communicate that discovery to the public. You have to share it because these are taxpayer-funded opportunities. So those EPO teams are growing. You know, at the Rubin Observatory, which hasn't even started, right? They haven't even taken their first science, but they are growing their science team. So I wish there were more. There are few opportunities, but there seem to be a lot more of them. And someone asked, well, how do I stand out if you're a pure astronomer? I think that's when you can leverage these opportunities and experiences you had as a grad student, where you have gone to schools, you've gone to community organizations, you've volunteered at a star party. There are these solar system ambassadors that JPL runs, where they're just community experts sharing the passion of space exploration. You can point to that. And if you have teaching experience, you can point to that, how you've talked and discussed science to various levels and various age groups, and have that connection. So I am optimistic that there are more opportunities coming. And I really think that this portfolio of science engagement, science communication is really pivotal to our prosperity as a society, as a nation, because science and engineering is going to define the 21st century if it hasn't already.
Absolutely. And the thing is that not everybody wants to be in outreach and communications and education. So when you have that desire and when you're willing to put in the work to develop the skills, you actually make yourself more competitive for those different roles. And for the audience, just so you know, Shanil was just saying EPO, just to clarify what that stands for: Education and Public Outreach, EPO. You often see those types of offices and that acronym in the missions, in universities, in nonprofits, research institutions, that sort of thing. Tania, how about you? What are you seeing in terms of outreach positions? How abundant are these roles, particularly with STSCI? And what are some of the skills and experiences that you think make candidates qualified and competitive for those roles?
Sure, absolutely. Well, some of the folks that work in our Office of Public Outreach, we have a variety that have from an astronomy background to education. We have a lot of employees now who were teachers at one point of their career and are now part of the Institute. The other thing that I'll mention, I think someone kind of touched a bit on it, despite of what your role is at a science organization, especially Space Telescope Science Institute, there's always an opportunity to do outreach, to share your science. We have such a plethora of amazing astronomers, and, most of them want to give back to the community. So there'll always be an opportunity to participate and engage. And as far as like official positions, like everyone mentioned before, they are limited, but I do believe that it is growing. Steadily it is growing as we get more missions and outreach components becoming part of some of the requirements that we need to fulfill. You need to have an entire team, and at times, certain areas when it comes to outreach need to, has to grow in order to fulfill those mandates.
And so the thing that we can do, so let me ask you, and Tania, I'm going to throw it back to you for a moment. What can we do to make ourselves more competitive? So if I'm competing against other astronomy students, people with astronomy degrees for these types of roles, how do I get these roles? My instinct is, because while there are more roles, they are competitive, that the main way that I want to make myself more competitive is, number one, I want to network. So I want to engage with different people, both in astronomy and astronomy education and outreach, in advance of me needing a job, in advance of me building that career, so they get to know me. I want to promote myself appropriately to those community members so that they see that I am interested in this area. I want to engage in those opportunities like we've all been talking about, the different extracurricular opportunities or opportunities within my institution that will allow me to demonstrate that I've produced or been a part of work products associated with outreach and education. But what else? Am I on the right track, Tania, do you think? Are there other things that I could do to make myself more competitive?
I think you touched mostly on all the areas. I mean, collaboration is huge because, you know, the astronomy community is, I don't want to say small, but most people, if you've been in the arena long enough, you know everyone or they know someone that that knows someone. So what I suggest is tapping into networks, you know, again, going back to volunteering. You know, I'm also the co-chair of the AAS education committee, and we just recently formed a subcommittee called the outreach subgroup, and there will be an opportunity at the upcoming AAS for people to join that subgroup, even though you're not part of the education committee itself. So that's one way, because you'll meet other like-minded people, and you never know, from those professionals that are already in the field, they'll remember you when they may come across your name when they're reviewing the resumes, like, oh yeah, I remember this person worked with me on this project. So those are other ways that you can put yourself ahead of the game.
That's huge. I'm so glad to hear of this initiative. So quick side note about this: how do we get involved in that particular subcommittee? How can people, should they contact you? Is there a particular catch-all email? What can they do if they want to join this committee or at least support it in some way?
Absolutely. We're going to have some time at the AAS education booth. So if you are attending the AAS meeting, look up to what times that we're going to be there. I believe it's on Monday, I think at 5:30. But prior to that, if you're interested, and if you're not going to be at the meeting, you can send me an email and I'll make sure to touch base with you when we're ready to solicit members for that. And I'll make sure to drop down my email address in the chat before the session is over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tania. I'm so glad you said that. I had no idea about that initiative. What a cool opportunity for people in the community. Rica, how about you? Were there other things that we could do to make ourselves more competitive, do you think?
Sure. One thing that I see a lot, and I should throw this out because it's relevant to some of the conversation that's gone by already. We know, based on numbers, it's not just anecdotally, we as a society of astronomers are reaching more human beings in colleges every single year. The current statistics show that there's upwards of about 300,000 students just in the United States that take a version of an Astro 101 course every year, just here in the US. And you have to remember, that's everybody, right? That's Astro 101, the no prerequisites, the gen ed. I saw this as the path of least resistance to my physical science credit to get out with a degree. That's who's in those courses. So, and for most of them, it's their very last formal exposure to science in their entire lifetimes. So you have a tremendous opportunity, no pressure, right, to reach these people who are becoming meaningful contributors to society. You have the potential to change how they perceive science's roles in society, and whether it's, you know, something that they should become an informed consumer about, or whether it's something that we just let the smart people do and then we just are supposed to accept whatever it is that they tell us. I mean, you have a huge potential to change how people think about science and how they interact with science, and to help them understand that they can do science. Humans are born as scientists. It's just somewhere along the way, we either get really tired or we have a bad experience, and it just kind of gets sucked right out of you, I think, at some point. But a few of us are able to hold on to the, no, I like this thing, that I just want to know stuff about the universe that I'm in. And so we have this tremendous opportunity. And so what I see in a lot of my students is they have so many other skills that aren't typically considered STEM skills, like the ability to produce amazing quality videos with a cell phone, for crying out loud. Yes. The ability to write amazing poetry. Not that astronomers don't do this, but again, it's a skill that you don't typically think of a STEM person, right? Doesn't always go hand in hand with that in your brain. And to be able to combine some of those things, I know there's a lot of astronomers that do projects like that in their courses, specifically so that they give those students something to latch onto that they can call their own. It's not just about the Astro content. So if you're one of those people, even though you're one of those people that has latched onto the Astro content, if you're one of those people that has any of those skills, figure out how to work that in and use it to market yourself. If you're a student, especially if you're even an undergrad, I started to say especially grad students, but even an undergrad, if you have the opportunity to go to meetings like the AAS meetings, go. And don't just sit back and, kind of deer in the headlights the whole entire way. I know it seems scary for some folks, but we're doing a much better job as a society of bringing the students into the AAS meetings and helping them get acquainted with what goes on and how you shouldn't be afraid to talk to people, even though a lot of them still are. A lot of us may have been as young people. We're doing a much better job of that, and we need to keep doing that, because I'll be honest with you, I still have people that I am close friends and colleagues with that I met as an undergraduate at my first AAS meeting in 1996. And I'm still connected to many of those people. And actually, there's the flip side, that they actually remember who you were and certain things that you did and you talked about. And you're like, oh, I had no idea that these important astronomers would actually pay attention to me, let alone remember. So I don't say that to ward people off or scare people, but just if you try to make an impact, you're going to have a bigger impact than you think you do. You're going to be more memorable than you think you are. And so don't let those kinds of opportunities go by you. Take advantage of them. Yeah.
Well, and this year, for the first time, there's going to be a comprehensive workshop for the winter meeting on Sunday of the winter meeting that's going to be hosted. It's going to be specifically how to really get the most out of the conference. It is on the website, so I hope you will all take advantage of that. I'll be there. There'll be a number of other speakers, but I think it's going to be a really amazing session. And it's being put on, I believe, by a volunteer group of AAS members. So I think it's going to be really awesome. You mentioned, Rica, a couple of other these ancillary or what I call residual skills that we get from astronomy. And Shanil, I want to ask you a little bit about these skill sets, this diversity of skill sets. We are so bad at promoting ourselves in astronomy, the full extent of the value that we provide our employers. Can you talk a little bit about some of those exciting business and communications and leadership and creativity skills that graduate students, undergrads, and postdocs can extract from their experience now that will serve them well in outreach?
So that's a great question. By and large, we often talk about these kind of buzzwords, right? Problem solving, critical thinking, as these soft skills that we develop as graduate students and in doing science. But it's this communication piece too. We go to meetings to share our science. We go to meetings to talk with other astronomers and to share what we've learned. So that communication piece is critical. And we know, I remember being ingrained from my thesis advisor in grad school, practice your elevator speech, your 3-minute speech. So these kind of communication skills we're really good at. And I think that actually is one of the bigger things. There aren't gatekeepers anymore in terms of communicating science to the general public. Building an audience certainly is very difficult. It's very hard. But starting at that now, and this generation, as Rica was saying, are far more sophisticated and have those kind of skills of developing videos, taking a result from a mission and talking about the excitement of the new thing, putting it on TikTok, sharing it on YouTube. It may not get an audience. It may not get an audience, but it's starting for you to develop that skill set in storytelling and in communicating. What is the big deal? What is the central piece? What's the exciting things to go, right? And then you can start pointing to those kinds of things that you've done as a way of translating it to a new employer, to a new job, to a new discipline. And nothing is stopping you from doing that right now.
One of the great questions that we got that's kind of, it dovetails very nicely with what you just said. Leo, hi, Leo. Leo asked how I can market myself effectively through a career change from research to outreach. We kind of have touched on this a little bit, but I just want to take a moment to address this idea that, kind of like what you were just saying, Shanil, as a researcher in astronomy, you are building and growing and honing some very critical skills which are going to help you in outreach. And one of the most effective ways that you can market yourself and really pursue those careers in outreach is to really be mindful while you're in research, while you're doing your degree, your postdoc, whatever it happens to be, how you are using your skills at the moment to communicate, how you're using the skills to outreach, to do outreach, even if it's outreach at the moment within just the astronomy community. So for example, although I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics, I was the president of the Society of Physics Students at the University of Arizona. And I loved being a leader in that role. And one of the things that I did was I helped organize our presence within the student carnival where we raised money. So I was in charge of the nachos booth, and I negotiated to get nachos, and I developed a marketing campaign to encourage people to come buy nachos so that we could do fundraising. So I was doing fundraising, I was doing event planning, I was doing marketing. So I was getting all these experiences. Yes, it wasn't research, but I was getting them from the volunteer experience in my extracurricular, which I then was able to use to market myself for the role in the physics department, which I got when I graduated. And so what I think we often don't think about is we think that research and outreach there's like a very specific border between the two. And I am not seeing that. I'm seeing that there's a lot of skills in research that sort of prep us for outreach. And the fact that we're going to go into outreach is, of course, bolstered and buttressed by the fact that we're doing research and we have research. I want to just ask a quick question of anybody on the panel. We got a really interesting question. I believe it was from Sarah. And the question is, do I have to have a graduate degree to build an outreach career in astronomy outreach? Rica, Shanil, Tania, would you like to take it? What's your thought?
Sure. You do not need to have a graduate degree. I mean, you can do it both ways. We have employees who have only their undergraduate, but they volunteer all the time, and they are some of the most amazing speakers at our outreach events. So I think that the option is open on how far you want to pursue your career in astronomy, but there's definitely still opportunities and positions that are open, even with just an undergraduate a degree. The other thing that I want to mention also is I definitely encourage you to stop at the AAS employment committee during the time they're there. A wonderful colleague of mine, Quinn Hart, she's on that committee, and she's also one of our amazing outreach scientists. And so stop at STSEI's booth if you're at the Institute, and feel free to speak to any of the outreach scientists. They'll be happy to talk about their career track with you and give you any additional information that you would like to know about, working at STSEI and the science that we do. So I just wanted to put that plug in.
I love it, Tania. And Quinn, thank you for joining us as well. Quick plug for that, and you knocked it right out of the park. Every booth at the AAS meeting is going to be packed with people who do outreach of some kind. And so it would be such a fabulous opportunity for you to literally go to every booth and just say, I'm studying astronomy. I'd love to learn more about outreach careers at STSEI, at Roman, at this mission, at that mission. Could I talk to you a little bit about the experience? And everybody, I can almost guarantee 100% of the people that are on that booth floor, they will be thrilled to talk to you. And it's scary to do that, but you are amongst friends. This is the sisterhood and the brethren of astronomy nerds. These are your peeps, folks. Take advantage of those people because they started where you are right now, today. They were just like you, excited about astronomy, but also interested in outreach and curious and confused as to how they can build a career in this space. Before we we got so many questions. I wish we could spend 10 hours on this. I know all the panelists would love to spend at least 10 hours talking about this, but I would just want to share with you a quick thing. We want to get insight from all of you about what we can do differently, better, or more. I'm going to show you a quick slide. Diane, if you could put that link in the chat right now, I would appreciate it. This slide gives you the opportunity to give us feedback for us to know what we can do differently, better, or more, so that we can learn what other types of webinars and panels, career discussions, career topics you are interested in for the future. So I encourage you right now, go to this QR code, or you can click on it right there in the link, talk.ac/Alaina G. Levine. And of course, the code is outreach. If you fill this out really quickly right now, it's an emoji-based survey. We're going to give you a CV template, because I know if you want to build your career, you need to be able to market yourself. And the fundamental marketing collateral is the CV, particularly in outreach careers. So I want to give you that opportunity. While we are waiting for you to fill that out, I want to just give our panelists a couple more moments each to give us some final thoughts about building a joyous, meaningful, exciting, energized, balanced career in outreach. Shanil, why don't we start with you? Are there some final thoughts that you have, some final wisdom that you can give us that will allow us to achieve our goals in outreach?
Wisdom is a very high bar, so I will just share my thoughts. And coming back to the last conversation, the only prerequisites are passion and curiosity, and you'll be surprised how far passion and curiosity will take you. And so, because it comes through when you start creating events, volunteering at libraries and community centers and schools. It'll come through in your cover letter. It'll come through in the range of experience in your CV. So, for those that are worrying about, the credentialing requirement, passion and curiosity is what I say first. And hone your storytelling, hone the kind of the messages and the delivery, practice the kinds of conversations you want to have. I know, we just had Thanksgiving, and for some people that sometimes can be very stressful, but that's a good opportunity to practice these kind of conversations, especially when they sometimes can get or veer into controversial ideas. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, since we were plugging booths, stop at the ASP booth as well. Because we'll have, we can highlight some of the activities and the events that we're doing that is guided towards this cohort.
And Shanil, you promise you'll be super nice to us when we stop by your booth, of course.
Always. And
Yay.
we have books to give away often. So come get a book.
I love it. I know somebody else who's going to be super nice when I come to your booth, either STSCI or the Education Committee booth. Tania, you're going to be so nice to me, right? You promise? What are your final thoughts, your final pearls of wisdom for us in building a joyous, lovingly meaningful career in outreach?
I think for me, it's just, just don't give up and don't let that fire be dimmed out. Continue to always connect. There will be some challenges. I mean, one recent one was COVID, but for those of us who are passionate about it, we still found a way to do outreach in our community, even though it was virtual. But just continue to build on your public speaking skills. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are. So take as many offers as you can get to get comfortable with it, so that when the time comes and you do get a job opportunity, it will be second nature to you. So that's my last final advice to the audience.
I love it. And given that I'm a professional speaker, I really appreciate that you brought up the skill of public speaking. So important no matter what career we go into, but especially in outreach. Thank you so much, Tania. And Rica, I know you'll be nice to me too when we see each other at the AAS meeting, but while we're being nice, be nice to the audience and tell us some pearls of wisdom of building a wonderful career in outreach, please.
Yeah, like Shanil said, that's a pretty high bar. So let's see. I would echo that everything that everyone else said, but especially for students who are looking to get involved, you obviously have to be careful to not let outreach monopolize your time if you're working on research. So you do need to be careful about that balance. But at the same time, if that's something that's really important, if it matters to you, put yourself out there. You can go to local, other local colleges, two-year colleges, K through 12 schools, and ask. People love astronomy, right? So when they know that you have an actual connection, that you're an actual astronomer, all of a sudden you're their number one contact person. So don't be afraid to just put yourself out there. Schools that have STEM fairs, career fairs, especially two-year schools that do service learning, continuing education programs. I'm so lucky I got to go with our continuing education program and lead a group to Griffith Observatory a couple of times. I got to be their docent person for Griffith Observatory. It's a special learning event when you have a group of adult learners stuck in LA traffic in a bus and you're trying to figure out what to do with them to pass the time. So there's a skill set that you don't normally have to dig down deep for, but I did. So interesting things like that pop up. You just got to keep pushing to get yourself out there, even if you're not entirely sure that you think that experience might be right for you. You don't know until you try. I put myself into people's ways and was a little bit annoying enough that I've been lucky to speak at the largest Star Trek convention in the world now for the last 3 years running. And that's, I think, because I just annoyed the right people. So put yourself out there. Keep putting yourself out there. And I rarely say no. I mean, obviously there are reasons sometimes you have to, but I rarely say no when I get invited to do some type of outreach.
Well, and Rica, your cool factor, and Tania, your cool factor, and Shanil, your cool factor, all just multiplied exponentially. I am so thrilled to have spent the time with you today. Thank you all so much for your time and your candor and sharing ideas about how we can grow our careers in astronomy outreach. For the audience, as you know, this is recorded, so you'll be able to go back and listen to these wonderful ideas that the panelists had for you in the future and the past too, if you have a time machine. We'll see you at the AAS winter meeting in New Orleans in January. Thank you so much. And as always, we don't need to wish you good luck because you are astronomers and you rule the multiverse. But we will say, enjoy your amazing adventures towards your unicorn career in astronomy outreach. Thank you so much.